Hi there, Demi McConkey, and today I want to share with you probably the most powerful tool I've come across in a long time to really help me understand the human experience in order to not, I would say, like when you don't understand how the monkey suit runs, the monkey suit runs you. And so this tool that I want to share with you today, the tool kind of comes from three different masterful teachers, from Sid Banks, Michael Singer, and Michael Neill. So this tool comes in the form of three principles, and as given to the world by Sid Banks, a Scottish engineer who had an enlightened moment. And you'll probably understand these. They'll make sense to you because they should be familiar, because it's how your brain works, right? So the principle of mind really is the oneness. It's the matter from which we all come. Religious people talk about it as God, the divine. Physicists talk about it as the quantum realm. I like to think of it as this like vast ocean of oneness that is, the oneness that from where we have all come. And I like to imagine that we're sort of like this bucket of ocean water in our human form. Inside of the bucket, we experience this. Inside of our monkey suits, we experience separateness, which we need to in order to have the human experience, right? Without that, we wouldn't know where you ended and I began, and we would just merge, right? So that's sort of mind. And mind has an innate intelligence to it. It has that divine consciousness, or that divine wisdom connected to it. And thought so mind takes shape in thought, and thought is going to be reflected through our consciousness over and over again. So let me talk a little bit. Let me give you an analogy to see how these three come together first, and then I'll talk about thought and consciousness a little more individually. But think about it as a movie. And if this was a movie, then thought would be the reel of film. It's the content, right? And mind would be the projector and the power source. Now, if I had just those two alone, I could project a movie, but it would go out into outer space, and you wouldn't know what the movie was, what it was. There'd be no meaning to it. That's consciousness. Think of consciousness as sort of like the movie screen. And it has a bandwidth. So our consciousness can expand. And as our consciousness expands, our thought has more to work with. Mind takes shape in form, but the thought is reflected through our consciousness 24/7. So just by understanding these three principles, like the more that I've understood these, my consciousness has been able to expand, and my thoughts have been able to be different around problems and challenges in my life. I'll give you an example in just a minute. So I want to go into thought a little more specifically here. So, the nature of thought is that it's transient. It's ever moving. We don't have control of what comes into our head. Once it's in our head, some degree of control over what we can do with it. But it's very much like if you're driving down a street, thought is sort of like the things that you're passing, the trees, the other cars, the signs on the road. Those are all thoughts. Now you can grab onto those, or you can leave them. You can keep focusing on the memory of, I saw this car pass me by. It reminds me of my boyfriend's car in high school who cheated on me. He probably cheated on me because I had bad breath. Why do I always have bad breath? Oh yeah, I need to make my dental appointment. Like, we can do that. It's sort of like Michael Singer talks about it, like it's a train station. Thought it's like being at a train station where there's trains coming and going all the time. And we inadvertently hop on a train and we just don't realize it. And then the next thing we know, we've ended up in this destination, which is overwhelm and stress. But we had signals all along that that's the direction we were going. We just never hopped off the train, right? So the nature of thought is that it's transient. It is always moving. Now, thought, Michael Neill talks about, think of thought like it's the Play-Doh of the universe. I really like this image because we create everything in your world that is around you. Look around wherever you are, your house, your office, your car, everything that's in your world was a thought first. You created it with thought. And it became manifest. You have a thought and you feel a feeling, and that feeling causes you to take action or not take action. And it causes you to create things in your world or not create things in your world. So everything in your world was formed through the formless, the oneness, right? Through mind, taking shape in thought. With thought, it's the Play-Doh. We make either monsters or mansions out of this Play-Doh. When you understand these three principles and you understand the implications of them, you're going to be able to make more of what you choose and less inadvertently hopping on these trains that are taking you to destinations that you don't really want to be. Now, here's what's really important to understand about thought is we don't live in the world as it is. We live in the world as we think it is. So we are living in the feelings of our thinking. And, so we're like the feelings that you're experiencing are not a direct feedback system to what is happening in the world. It's really easy because of our consciousness to think that it is. Consciousness can be so strong that we believe that it's because of what my husband said to me that I'm so angry. If he wouldn't have said that to me, I would have been fine. I really did just have one of those experiences the other day. Or it's really because what's not in my bank account, that's why I'm so stressed and I have all of these bills. It's the situation that I'm living that is causing me to feel the way I'm feeling. The feedback that you're getting from your feelings is not about what's happening in your outside world. It's not about what your husband said or what's in your bank account or what else is going on around you. It's direct feedback on what you're feeling. And this is really good news because we have a lot of degree of control of that. We don't have control of what is happening in the world. That's not an option. But changing our thinking around it, or rather stopping our thinking around it, we do have control over. So Michael Neal gives an analogy that I think is useful. He says, when we get that wrong, when we get that backwards, when we think that our feelings are signaling what's going on in the outside world, especially with everything going on in the world today, it's like, well, of course I should be overwhelmed. Of course I should be stressed. But when we think that's what the feedback of our feelings is, it's like the check engine light coming on in your car and you going to check the engine in another person's car, right? It just doesn't work. Now, probably the coolest thing to understand about thought, and is definitely this understanding that has made the biggest impact in my business and life, is that it's understanding that thought, the very nature of it, is that it has innate intelligence within it. And if we will thought is transient, it's always moving. If you'll let your mind settle, fresh, new, creative, adaptive thinking can get in. But when we're stuck in the thinking loops of our feelings, I'm angry at my husband and or my husband said something to me and I think that he's a turd, and then I get angry at him and I think more thoughts and I collect all this evidence of this that he did and that he didn't do, and then I'm stuck in the feeling of my thinking and the thinking of my feeling. It's this thinking feeling loop, and fresh, new, creative, adaptive thinking cannot get in when you're in that. It's like a traffic jam. So the nature of the mind is actually clear. If we'll let it settle, right? It's sort of like a bottle of murky water. If you shake it up, all you need to do to let it clear is just leave it alone. So when you notice that you're feeling something that you don't want to be feeling, angry, frustrated, stressed, overwhelmed, anything that you don't want to be feeling, all you have to do is stop your thinking. And I know that sounds so incredibly ridiculously easy. And in the past, I've tried to do things like that. I've tried different things to interrupt my thinking. I did handstands and it never really worked. And that's because my consciousness hadn't expanded to understand these three principles. When I understood these three principles and I understood the nature of mind, I was able to stop my thinking in a way that fresh new thinking would come in. And the thing about this thinking is it's relevant to whatever situation is at hand. So if you have an issue with your finances and you don't know what to do, fresh new thinking about that situation can get in. You have a relationship issue. if you let your mind settle, fresh new thinking can get in. So how do you let your mind settle? You just leave it alone. You just stop thinking, but you actually have to stop thinking. I know it sounds incredibly too easy, and it reminds me of a really funny Bob Newhart skit that he did where he was a therapist and a lady came to visit him that had this phobia of being buried alive in his box, and his $5 therapy session to him was stop it. And I laugh because it really is that simple. But like I mentioned before, I tried this before and it didn't work. It's when I understood the 3 principles. I understood there's a distinction around stopping it that I want to share with you here. Stopping it isn't that you just remove yourself from the situation, although often for me, removing myself from the situation is helpful. So when I am thinking of something that is causing me stress, let's just say the numbers in my, the money didn't come in that was supposed to come in, and I've got to pay bills, and I'm worried about it. What I need to do is stop thinking about it. And so for me, the thing that I have, my best way, the strategy that I use to stop thinking is actually to go for a walk. I disengage with whatever it is that I'm doing that's perpetuating the thinking, and I get outside. I love going for a walk where nature can the being in nature will help my mind settle. And I very intentionally, for the entire walk, try to not think. As I'm not thinking, I give space for anything to occur to me that occurs. In one of my earlier videos that I did a couple weeks ago, I was talking about that in the beginning, there is nothing, right? In the nature of this creative life force, this innate intelligence, is that it can only come in through nothing, right? It is, and mystics talk about it like a fertile void. It's a very important space in our creative process to come into this fertile void, into the nothing. And so when you stop your thinking, that's where you need to go. You need to go into the fresh emptiness of nothing, into the fertile void. And as you do that, you'll notice that all of a sudden things will just occur to you out of nowhere. And if you really think about it, you'll notice how this has happened in most of your entire life. I mean, studies prove that insights come to people most frequently in the shower, out in nature, on walks. It's been happening all along, but if you'll start to distinguish, put words to it, understand where your insight comes and what are the parameters, what are the exercises or practices that will produce more of it, what's going on in your mental space that helps clear your mind. When you understand those practices, then you can start practicing with this. This has been so powerful for me that it's my new strategy in my business, and I cannot even tell you the implications. As a matter of fact, I was kind of joking that my new boardroom for my business is my neighborhood, because whenever I have an important decision to make, and as a matter of fact, I do not make any big important decisions without going for a walk, right? And when I go for a walk, recently I had to write a bio I'm speaking at an event coming up, and writing a bio is my least favorite thing to do for myself. I get in my head, my thinking, I want to make sure that it sounds right, and I don't want to be bragging too much, and I get in my head and I'm spinning in my feeling and thinking state, and there's a traffic jam and no fresh new creative thinking is getting in. So I was noticing that was going on, and I closed the computer, I went for a walk. And I had to very deliberately just stop the thinking about it. Not even trying to, what should it be? Maybe I should do this. What's the first line? No, stop all of that. Just let my head empty. And by the time I had done the loop within my neighborhood, it just occurred to me how to begin. And when I got home, I was able to write it in a way that I was able to pass it on to my team, and we were done very quickly. And this is consistently what I am experiencing in any problem or challenge in my life. Because you see, a problem or challenge in your life isn't what's happening on the outside. It's something, the problem doesn't even actually exist. You've just made it up in your head to exist. And if you'll stop, then you'll have an insight. It will just occur to you how to handle the situation. And 10 times out of 10, the way it occurs to you to handle the situation will be something that helps you handle it with a significant amount of grace and ease. So I invite you to play around with this and start to explore these 3 principles. Notice how they are playing out in your life. Notice when you understand how the nature of mind works, especially that nature of thought, just what you're able to do with it. Happy creating.